People are seeing an increasing number of personalized online news services and, of course, numerous search engines available on the web. But such services face limitations in being centered on text-based news sources and employing screen-based user interfaces. Although these limitations are quite acceptable when working with a traditional computer, they prevent access in a variety of situations such as while driving or otherwise out of the office. Synthetic news radio is an attempt to provide a different way of accessing and personalizing the news. It deals with radio newscasts and supports several audio-only user interfaces, in addition to a graphical interface. The SNR user does not make queries, but rather, while listening to the news, can navigate between stories and ask to track or ignore particular stories. Later in the day, SNR generates synthetic newscasts, updated hourly, which reflect the interests previously expressed by a user. Synthetic news radio uses speech recognition and clustered text news stories to automatically find story boundaries in an audio news broadcast, and it provides a semantic representation that can match audio news stories of similar content. One difficult question we try to answer with SNR is, how do you really teach a computer to understand the content of an audio news broadcast? Initially, we obtain semantic information by feeding the audio into IBM ViaVoice, a commercially available automatic speech recognition package.
Former FBI profiler Clint Van Zandt.
The frightening part of this person right now is the total...
Even though speech recognition technology is improving, its performance on broadcast news is still poor. The resulting text does not even reveal story boundaries, much less a true understanding of the content. We approach this problem by building a semantic representation of news stories from a corpus of current news received on a separate text news feed. These stories are related to what is heard on the hourly news, but neither represent a concise summary nor provide a one-to-one mapping to the newscast in any particular hour. Analysis of this text feed does lead to an underlying semantic representation, which is updated hourly of today's top stories. This is used in concert with speech recognition and phrase boundary determination techniques to segment and classify the audio news recordings. Additionally, the text associated with each story provides a semantic database against which stories from one newscast can be compared with those from another. To help us find story boundaries, we use a technique called latent semantic indexing to calculate the correlation of intonational phrase transcripts with text news clusters of today's top stories. A story boundary occurs where the highest phrase correlation shifts from one story cluster to another. Creating a structure for audio news allows us to create advanced interfaces focused around a couple key ideas. The first is the idea of nonlinear browsing. Because each audio newscast is segmented and classified, the interfaces should support playback at the story level rather than simple time offset into the audio file. The user should be able to jump ahead to the next story if the current one is uninteresting, or jump back to a previous story.
That civilian satellite can take the kind of detailed photos. Once F-16 fighter crash, problem with the landing gear, both crewmen ejected, sixth crash. Orders to factories for big-ticket items like refrigerators up in March after an end-of-winter slump. Still a lot of factory workers around the country.
The second idea is the concept of interaction while listening. The underlying text-based semantic representation is to be hidden from the user. All the user needs to do is listen to the news and optionally express interest in following or killing a story just by taking an action while hearing that particular story.
Another accidental bombing by a NATO warplane, more civilians dead. Let's go live to the Pentagon. ABC's Pam Coulter.
And two military
Big birthday celebration in Iraq today. Songs, poetry, often on television at a nightclub in New Orleans. You'll be missed.
The system then processes future broadcasts for presentation to the user. Unfortunately, as we mentioned before, the traditional desktop metaphor doesn't always apply. For particularly important stories marked with a special flag, The system has the ability to forward the story to a Motorola Tenor voice pager, a sort of portable answering machine.
Yet another record high close on the Dow. It's ending today up 13 points and change.
In addition to single-story presentation to the voice pager, our system supports remote browsing of an entire synthetic newscast via a touch-tone-driven phone application. Story navigation is similar to the graphical interface, but without any visual feedback. For this synthetic newscast, we indicated Wall Street and Kosovo as two of our top stories. Let's enable the intro scan mode, which is similar to the familiar radio function that scans multiple stations.
Was higher, but the Dow Industrials closed down. From ABC News, I'm Tim O'Donnell. The bombing of Yugoslavia that began today...
To help compensate for the lack of visual feedback, we support a variety of audio feedback mechanisms. The following sound indicates that we have selected to follow a new story.
Way for one of two men accused of killing gay University of Wyoming student Matthew Shepard.
In conclusion, synthetic news radio gives users access to personalized news in a variety of situations while maintaining presentation and interaction in the rich audio domain.